Old Roller Nation, welcome to the show. Mr. Alex Ecklin, the inventor and propagator of the G-roll. He's at Masterskya Academy in New York, and he's a black belt. Really cool guy. I've watched the G-roll about 10,000 times, so I feel like we're best friends. But Alex, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Harrison. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
So real quick, just give us like just an introduction. How did you come to jiu-jitsu and grappling? And, like just a little bit of your journey, and then we'll kind of go into detail on some of the stuff as we go.
Yeah, so I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in 2006. I started in a small gym in Brooklyn, New York. And then I got my black belt under Vitor Shaolin. And a couple of years ago, actually almost 4 years ago, myself and my partner Van Allen Flores, we started Masterskya, and that's where we're training at now.
It's really cool. And obviously, we're in the middle of, for those who may be listening later, hopefully we're past this, but we're in a pretty tough spot in terms of the COVID lockdown and all that. So we the Old Rollers, we definitely wish your academy the very best, and we're here to support you in any way we can.
Thank you so much.
So to give you just a quick rundown about what the podcast is about, I'm sure my listeners are tired of hearing it, but I always want to talk with my guests about it, because it's something that maybe not everyone is completely thinking about at all times, but I think there's good reason to consider longevity and skill acquisition and being dangerous on the mat as not necessarily mutually exclusive. I always kind of thought that they were, but through these interviews, I've kind of learned that the better we get, there seems to be a longevity element with that too, where if we spend our time trying to gain skill and ability versus spending our time trying to muscle things and just being, like trying to win necessarily on aggression or something like that, that our joints and our muscles and our bones seem to have an easier time with that. So we get the dual benefit of being better at what we choose as our our hobby and as our sport, which is jiu-jitsu and grappling, but we also get the opportunity to do that for longer, which is exciting for me on both ends. So that's the origins of the podcast.
Beautiful.
And then to talk with you, what brought me to you, as we mentioned earlier, was the G-roll. A really good friend and training partner of mine is who introduced me to it, and he had a neck injury, and so the reason that he was so interested in using the G-roll is that distance management of being able to keep someone from cross-facing him and being able to move to keep them in a way sort of clamped at a safe distance, while he can then move around and be offensive and aggressive. So it's really exciting to get to talk to you. And I already talked to him. Big shout out from my buddy Jackson. He's pretty excited that we get to interview you.
What's up, Jackson?
So wanted to talk about the origins of that. Like, how did you come to the G-roll? Because it's kind of it's built out of fundamental movements of jiu-jitsu, but at the same time, it's also kind of out of left field. It's really fascinating to me, what was sparked the initial idea?
Yeah, I've told this story so many times, and I sometimes there's new things that come out, and there's so much going on. So a couple of things to point out. The first is my coach Shaolin. He would predominantly teach us and train in the gi. So I would say 90% of the classes were in the gi. We had maybe 1 or 2 classes a week that were no gi, that I really would look forward to. And with that said, I just have a super poor habit in my life, which is I was biting my nails ever since I'm a kid. And because I was biting my nails, every time I would make grips and people would rip grips off, I would always have a little pain in my fingers. And I don't know, I think it was mixed with that and mixed with other things that I even though when I trained in gi jiu-jitsu, I never really utilized the gi as much. Also, the guards that I would always gravitate to were not really gi dependent. So for example, I never really played spider guard that much. I like it, but it's not like a main part of my game.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, Shaolin, he was teaching this sweep. So he's famous for this half guard sweep called the Shaolin sweep, where
Mm-hmm.
you grab the pants and then you grab the sleeve and you bump the person forward. And then when they come back into you, you pull the sleeve across their body and then do a backflip and you end up on top of them. It's just such a beautiful sweep. But the first part of that sweep, there was a gentleman from Arizona. I'm not sure where he is at now. Steve Rosenberg, I believe his name is, where he would just, I watched the highlight of his and he was hitting everybody. He would just grab the pants, grab the sleeve, bring his hips up and use his top knee to knock his partner over and then end up on.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you needed the pants and you needed the sleeve. And then, with that said, I was also loving, and I still do, the Kimura from bottom of half guard. So one day I was training with a training partner, and I would always try to go for the Kimura on him, and he was kind of sitting back a little bit, so all his weight was in his heels, and it was, I believe, a no-gi training session, or maybe it was in the gi, and I remember thinking to myself, I think I can knock him over backwards. But my feet were naturally crossed because that's just how I'll play the half guard often. And I thought to myself, what if I just like do a push up, and as I push up, maybe I can just knock him over. And then I did it, and it kind of worked. And I was like, wow, that was kind of easy because this particular training partner was super tough. He was an MMA fighter and really strong guy. And then I started trying it more and more and more, and I kind of became obsessed with it. Showed it to my training partners, and they started to do their own variations, and kind of just took off, from there.
What's really exciting about that to me, it's funny that you mentioned that you had chewed your fingernails. I have eczema, and my fingertips they kind of peel.
Wow.
And so, similar to you, I have a hard time with a lot of gi grips. Like I can work with the collar some, but when I get in the sleeve, anything like that, or any kind of like a cuff grip where I'm rolling my fingers in, I'm just going to feel that all day. It's just a total pain in the butt. So I kind of play similarly to you. I like the gi, but I don't look for a lot of gi grips just because of my fingers. And when you were talking about that, I'm hearing, like basically you were working within the limitations that your body was going to allow to be friendly, that you could train every day. Because if your fingers hurt all the time, all of a sudden, like, it's a lot less fun. That's kind of a pain. So that's pretty cool to hear that you were basically using a limitation to your advantage in a way. Like, you were working within what you had, and that developed into a skill set that maybe if your fingers would not have felt that pain, you might not have decided to develop it.
Yeah, exactly.
So another thing that you were saying there was that, and for anyone who's watching this or listening, Alex actually released the G roll as an instructional on YouTube for free. And when I say that, I became familiar with it from a friend. My friend sent it to me, and I watched it. And I remember watching it and just thinking, at first, this looks a little hokey. But then my friend who sent it to me, he started doing it to me. And I was like, okay, that's not hokey. And then the next question was, is this real in like the way that is there a self-defense case for this? Because like I said, my friend had like a neck injury, so he was using it to protect his neck. And then thinking about that is like, okay, the distance management here, this can guard against punches too. Like there's an MMA and a self-defense case for the G roll. So talk a little bit about that. Have you worked with some people from a self-defense or an MMA standpoint on it, and kind of worked within that to troubleshoot it and see what how it can work?
It's sort of, I think, we're having a lot of fun, with the sport aspect of jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, we have to respect the tradition. We have to respect, where it originated, and, put the self-defense into account. To be completely honest with you, I train purely for fun. And all of those other things are just, byproduct. But with having self-defense in mind, you want to be in two ranges, either a very close range or a far range, right? So
Mm-hmm.
close range, from my experience, it's a very physical range because you have to be tense that the whole time, and you have to keep very tight to your partner or to your opponent. And it is pretty physical as well because the close range half guard positions are wrestling dependent, right? So
Mm-hmm.
know how to wrestle from there. You need to know how to come up, and you need to be tense the whole time. Whereas the far distance, the knee shield, your knee is just naturally right in front of you, and your bone structure is doing the job as opposed to the muscle, if that makes sense.
It does.
It's much less energy reliant. So I think you can kind of be more relaxed with the knee shield. So with keeping that in mind, I think it's really applicable to self-defense. As far as like MMA goes and self-defense goes, I'll be the first to say that you want to stand up right away. You want to get up right away. So and that will be easier with a knee shield since the person is not necessarily grabbing you, right? So you have that
Mm-hmm.
ready. So also the knee shield, you're halfway up from say going on your butt and then doing a technical stand up to get back to the feet.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and I hadn't even, while I know that obviously in MMA you want to get up, I hadn't really uh, put together that the knee shield, by virtue of framing your opponent away, gives you the space to technical stand up. So that's there's definitely the case for that. I like that. So the obviously there's more to Alex Ecklin than the G roll. It's just that my introduction to you came from that, and I honestly, and I'm saying this truthfully, I think it's really awesome, and I recommend it to anybody that is like interested in half guard, any kind of knee shield stuff. If you're exploring that, I always kind of point that out to them and be like, hey, you need to check this out because this can be a really good supplement. So the people that I train with, like I have a wrestling coach, and a lot of my half guard stuff is wrestling based, like get the underhook and wrestle out. But if that's not working, the next step is either coming to that knee shield and looking at the G roll, or can I come to close guard? So it's just if I can't come up, then I need to get a more powerful turning position, or I need to come to a stronger guard, we'll say, which is the close guard. So to me, it's right in that pocket between closed and open guard, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
So looking, at some of the things that we wanted to talk about, or that I had asked you about, you competed a lot, and you had some struggles competing early, and it took a long time for you to kind of find your groove. Talk a little bit about that, and then what kind of put you over the edge where you started to have some success.
Yeah, so there was, quite a few factors. The first school that I trained at, it was two amazing coaches. They were both black belts under Renzo Gracie, but their focus was primarily self-defense. And, I was just like a rough around the edges 17-year-old kid, and I
Mm-hmm.
cared less about self-defense. So I was just like, I saw a Naga belt. I said, man, I want that belt so bad. I want to go to sleep with that belt. So to me, that's how my mindset was. And so I did one competition, when I was in that school, I believe, and I lost. And then after 2 years, I moved to Shaolin's. So I think the first thing is the change of the schools, so going from one to the next, and different format, even almost different jiu-jitsu, where Shaolin, his style was different than theirs. So I think that was the first part. And the second thing is I could never really find myself in the beginning, and I never had a game plan. When I would walk in, I was just I would shake hands, and I'm thinking I'm gonna pull guard, and next thing you know, my opponent pulls guard on me, and then I'm like, oh man, I would feel lost, and it would just be like a downward spiral. And I think I never won a match until purple belt. I must have competed like 10 times at least. I got my purple belt pretty quickly. I got it, in a little bit over 2 years, I believe. And then I stayed at purple belt for like 5 or 6 years. So I had it was a little bit of a, not similar to others, I would say. But I was always persistent. I never let, the losses get to me. I do remember, like, I was like maybe 18, 19, and I told me I would walk on the street before a tournament, and I would tell myself, like, I'm gonna go win that tournament. I don't care. Like, I'm gonna be to die out there. Like, I'm reading like samurai quotes. And I would go and I would lose my first match, and I'm like, I was
Mhm.
frustrated. But I never let that get to me, and my passion for jujitsu, never died. And then formulating a game plan really was what started to make the difference. So every match I would come in and I would rehearse it in my mind what I would do. And actually, it starts from the very first handshake. So I mentioned earlier that I would shake hands and the person would pull guard on me. So I started to find ways that I would ensure a very high success of myself pulling guard. So as soon as I would shake hands, I would back up and I would start to circle in a certain way, and I would try to kind of lure my partner, my opponent in. And this enabled me to make my grip and pull first. And this started to give me some success because I started to fight on my terms. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the start. And then the confidence of my half guard and my G roll really it was the difference between winning and losing. Because every time I would come into the tournament, I would tell myself, man, if I can get that half guard, I can get the sweep. I know it. And even in the matches I lost, I was still able to be successful with the sweep. And little by little, I started to, win one match, win two matches, and I won my first tournament that I ever won. I believe was the IBJJF New York Open, and that was to me like an incredible experience. And ever since then, my confidence grew, and as my confidence grew, my jiu-jitsu grew, and it just started to spiral off of that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And something that you said there that was really exciting to me is doing everything on your own terms. Like you were setting the matchup to go your way. And last night we talked with Brian Freeman, who's an adaptive athlete, and he had an injury in the Navy that caused him to lose the use of his legs. And so he was pulling to bottom side control, but he was doing it in such a way that he would have his frames and he would already be working to escape or reverse the position as they were coming to bottom side control. So it's sort of the same thing of, like if you're having trouble making, going all the way back to that first step and saying, how can I begin to position myself to be successful? So it sounds like you went through a process very similar to Brian's process in your game planning.
Exactly. I would say in the beginning stages, like let's say, the students are newer, like white, blue, purple belts, like it's pretty much who draws first is going to win, so to speak. And in this context, what I mean is who is going to go get to their position that they're strongest at first. And a lot of times, some white belts, they have some positions that it's almost like a purple belt level position, right?
Mm-hmm.
You put somebody into their close guard with that overhook, they're really strong from that spot, and then they have a lot of holes in other spots. But if they can get to that spot, the probability of success is going to be very high. So the whole fight is just getting there. So, and I think from the very first step, just stepping onto the mat, that's where it starts. And I think that would be my advice for anybody that's a little bit newer or looking to increase their success in competition.
Yeah, I like that too, because what you said there is that even white belts have some things that they're really good at, maybe even purple belt level. We all know somebody who they kind of punch above their weight class, like their whole game is not that great, but they got this, like maybe they got just like a crazy guillotine, like, and if you get inside of that arm, you're going to have a long day. And globally, they're a white belt, but in that one spot, man, they're pretty darn tough, and you got to be really on your game to get back out of that.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's kind of what I did, and that was the beginning of my success.
You were finding that sweeping position, and at your level, you were much higher in that spot than you were as a global game.
Yeah, and I also had like this confidence, and I was like, in like like my favorite show as a kid. I'm not sure if you know about it. It's Dexter's Laboratory. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a guy, and he has this like secret laboratory, and he's making these experiments in this like dungeon. And I don't know. I was always fascinated with like secrets and like I have something that somebody else doesn't have, and as a kid, and I think this translated into my jujitsu where I came in, I'm like, man, no one knows this move, and it coming, and I'm gonna hit it with them, and my confidence was really high, and I think this helped as well. The reason is because it helped me calm my nerves down, helped me be cool, calm and cool and collected. Because I remember I did judo as a kid, and my parents threw me in a tournament And I remember just sitting there as a kid, and I was just like trembling and shaking. And then I ran to the bathroom, I threw up. I went to the tournament, I lost. And then, so I was never like a natural competitor or a natural athlete. And
Hmm.
so nervous during every tournament that I ever had. I'm still nervous till today, but I think having that in my back pocket helped me be calm.
I think what you're saying there makes a lot of sense, and I especially like the idea of like Dexter's Laboratory and it's like the little book of secrets because and actually was talking with this about this with Brian. Jiu-jitsu is almost an unnatural act, and you've heard people call it a superpower, like it's a secret. And when in nature, when two people or two animals of the same species fight, usually the bigger, stronger one wins. It's just like how the numbers work out. But in jujitsu, we can flip that script because of some, like the technique and the distance management and the clinch and all those things that we can do. We can actually turn nature on its head. But in order to do that, we have to move in a way that is counter to the normal movement. And it sounds like you were taking that same concept and applying it not to people, in fights necessarily, but to people that you were doing competitive jiu-jitsu with. You know something that they don't know, and then you put them in a place that they don't understand, and it's very hard for them to figure it out on the fly when you already have all these movements drilled into your body and just ready to go with all the reactions.
Yep.
That's a, I think that's a good, um, just basic strategy in general. I think most people would say becoming a domain expert makes you very difficult to beat if you get into that domain.
Yes.
But then, you know, every so like when you were coming up in Shaolin's gym, as you're working on, your half guard and the G roll and things like that, what was the culture like there that allowed you to work within this one framework, which, like as you were coming up with it, obviously it's not part of the curriculum because you're kind of coming up with it on the fly and improvising and troubleshooting it. So the gym culture there had to be pretty open to allow that to happen, would you say?
Yeah, I think that was it, but also like, and some people maybe don't believe me, but this is absolutely true. I'm one of the worst students ever, uh, like I barely got through school. And like you can ask Shaolin too, like, it took me, I tell this honestly, like Shaolin's number one sweep is the butterfly sweep, and he taught it in so many classes, so many variations. He tried to make us do lie rounds from it. It took me like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years to even hit one, you know, like I was just terrible at it. And I was the person that, he's showing a technique and I'm trying to make up my own variation, you know, he gives us a goal, like, all right, guys, start in a single leg, and then your job is to do the X, Y, and Z. I'm, upside down trying to take the back, and I don't know, just I was always kind of doing my own thing. And, so in that respect, I guess I was never punished for it or something like that or reprimanded. So it was open, but I think that's why I was able to kind of roll with it because my personality, as soon as I find something that works, I just try to like, keep sharpening it up. So I just became obsessed with it, and it's all I did for a few years. And then my training partners were like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And it was also, I was a purple belt at that time, just before becoming a brown belt. And I didn't have a job. My only job was teaching private lessons. So I just started teaching it in privates, and the people that I started teaching it in private started hitting it, and it kind of just spider webbed from there. And that's how I would say it started to kind of progress and evolve.
I really like that concept where you were having troubles. Like you're saying that you were the worst student, ever. Like I might be the guy who's got second place. If you were the worst, then I had to be the second worst. And it was, and I'm saying this honestly. There were many times when in the first 6 months that I did jujitsu, where my instructor, if he wanted me to take my right hand and move it to the left, he would say, "Now, Harrison, you're going to take your left hand and you're going to move it to the right." And I would do that wrong, but it would be the right thing.
But that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu, that it's we have concepts, we have principles, but nothing is set in stone as we see, right? So
Hmm.
if it works, it works, and who's to say what's right and wrong, in many aspects.
Well, I think jujitsu is always looking for effectiveness, right? Like it's a because we have the randori and the rolling, we're always testing effectiveness of what we're doing, and we get a very immediate feedback loop. Either what you did worked or it didn't, and so we get the opportunity that feedback loop, because it's so immediate, can really help innovation. Because if you have slow feedback loops, then you may not know if something's working for a long time. But with jujitsu, it's right in your face. It either worked or you got smashed, and so you have an immediate response, which is, I think that might be why the sport, one of the reasons why the sport is evolving so much is that very quickly, okay, I'm onto something or I'm not. Like you can go down a rabbit hole and it sucks the whole way. Your body's going to tell you like, bro, we got to quit this.
The coolest thing about jujitsu is that it operates on a scientific method and not on a philosophical method, right? So, in some martial arts, which they're good too for different reasons, but it's a lot of philosophy. It's like, but if this, then this, and this, and this, and it's like, but we don't see it working live. In jujitsu, it's we have a hypothesis. Let's do a procedure and let's test it out and see what happens. And if it works once, it can work again.
Hmm.
You know?
I love that thought of the mat as a lab, and I think the G roll is a demonstration of that. The scientific methods, like you practiced it, you troubleshot it, you gave it to your partners to play with and see what variations they saw, and I think that's a fantastic representation, just like you said, of the scientific method of jujitsu, and that's to me that's very exciting. Is that um, so I have some friends who do Japanese jiu-jitsu, and so anyone who does Japanese jiu-jitsu, if I get this wrong, I don't, you can send your hate if you want, but I could, believe me, I could be wrong. I've been married long enough to know I could be wrong. But Japanese jiu-jitsu is taught almost in like a hierarchical or archaeological way, meaning that this is the way we do this, and so you have to execute this way, and if you don't, then it's incorrect. Whereas Brazilian jiu-jitsu is taught in an alive and experimentational way. It's like, this is the thing we're trying to accomplish. Your body may require something different to make that happen. Like, to give an example, I'm built kind of like a wrestler. Like, I'm short, I'm stocky, I get muscle pretty easily. Like I'm just a thicker build. So I would love to be able to do, like, really gorgeous, open guard, spider and dilly heba, things like that. I think that's just amazing. But my body is just like, bruh, that ain't for us. Like I'm as soon as I start wrestling up on a single, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense.
Nice. For sure. And I think that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu, and I think your body type is also going to determine, what you're going to gravitate to. And I think, we have to kind of take everything in and, start to specialize depending on our body and depending on our, as you said earlier, our limitations if we have them and our strengths if we have them.
Hmm. Yeah, that was a huge thing that Brian said, is like, find your strengths and then work to build all these avenues, both to them and from them,
Yes.
so that you don't you're never too far away from something that you're strong at. Don't just sit and dwell on what you're not good at. Like, work on what you are good at and get better and better, and then find more and more ways to get to it, and then to go from it, aggressively or offensively.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I sit down with a lot of my students, and we actually make game plans, as I mentioned to you earlier, before they compete. And what I do is, I just again, I graduated with a management and finance degree, but my knowledge on either is non-existent. But along one a friend that was helping Van and I with some marketing, he told me about this thing called the SWOT analysis. And I don't even know if I'm doing it correctly, but I love it and I ran with it. So, what I do is I write down the SWOT. So the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And together with the students, we write their strengths, their weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and then we formulate a game plan based off of that. But a lot of that has to do with what their strengths are and how we can channel their game to start and to work on their strengths, right? And how
Hmm.
to turn their weaknesses into their strengths and things like that. So I agree completely, especially from a competition standpoint.
That's fascinating, and we had talked earlier, as you know, when I gave you the outline of the things that I wanted to go over, that you've been working on some things at Masterskya, that in terms of your teaching method, that you've seen a lot of success with your students, that we wanted to talk about a little bit. Is that SWOT analysis a part of that, or is that separate from these other things?
That's part of it, that's part of it. We've been, in June, which is I guess next week already, it's going to be our 4-year anniversary. And the first class that I taught there to the last class that I've taught, the last class I taught was on March 15 or 16. They look, you wouldn't even be able to recognize it. When I first started, I had the pretty basic warm up, some drills, and then a technique of the day, and then everybody rolls. And in the beginning, I kind of had a framework of what I wanted to teach, but it was not that, concise. Today, first of all, every month we have a curriculum, and the curriculum builds up on itself. Every third month of the year, we have a fundamentals month. So the whole month is all just fundamentals. So if somebody started like in the second month, they can kind of catch up. And it also keeps the advanced students sharp, so make sure that the fundamentals are sharp. So this is one thing that we do. We adopted free drilling in every class. For example, like let's say you're working on your single leg from the open guard, right? And this is
Hmm.
that you've been working on, but on the curriculum it's all spider guard, and yes, you should know spider guard, you should know how to do it, you should know the threats in it, but you just want to single leg people. So in every class, when we start the class, I put the timer on and I say, guys, this is your time. Sketch like as if you're an artist, whatever you want to do. So you drill whatever you want to do, and I walk around and I give my suggestions, if necessary. And some people say, hey, what do you think I should drill? And they drill that, or they review things from the previous week or from the previous month. So we have this, open drilling during the class. This is one thing that we do. We do a lot of other things as well. I started jiu-jitsu at 17, and I was fortunate enough to be that it was all that I always did. And I would train twice a day, 3 times a day, and I would beat my body up, but I didn't really care about it. But I understand that some people are not as fortunate. Some people have injuries, people have limitations. People, maybe they're stressed out. They just worked 9 hours and they don't feel like going 100%. They don't want to compete. So in a lot of the classes, we designate different parts of the mat for different types of training. And when I teach, I'm serious, but I like to joke as well. So like I call one section ketchup, one section mild, and one section hot sauce. So for example, in the hot sauce section, you're going 100%. If you go in the hot sauce section and you complain that somebody's rolling too hard, that's too bad. You just ate something with spicy. You can't be complaining that you got a little pepper in your eye. So that section is going 100%. Then the mild section, it's like 60 to 80%. You're going pretty intense. And then the ketchup section, it's there's no spice at all. So you can flow roll light. Take it easy, drill, talk, etc. Like one thing that from Shaolin that I adopted, and Van adopted, is that like we don't like when we're rolling and somebody talks to us.
Hmm.
But a lot of people do that. And there's I realized later, like, why am I right? Like, why is my way the only way? Then I thought about it. I said, okay, if I'm competing and I'm going 100%, yes, this person talking to me is distracting, but maybe this person wants to roll a little bit lighter, and rolling lighter has a lot of benefits as well, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. So in the catch-up section, you can talk, you can chat, have more fun. We'll do whatever you want to do. So this is one of the things that we've been doing as well. These are pretty much the main things, and we're always trying to add and take away different things. We shorten the warm up, so we don't do like a very heavy calisthenic warm up. Our warm up is about 5 minutes, and then the majority of the warm up is from the drilling and the tech.
Hmm.
So these are some of the things that we've been working on to get the students to improve and become better within themselves.
That's I think that's a really creative way to deal with the differences on the mat, because every mat is such a diverse group of people. And even within, like for me, I usually like to train in the mild section, I would say, like, in that 70% range. I feel really good there. It's not going to just break me up because I'm coming up on 40. That's not too old. I feel pretty darn good, but if I push it too hard too long, then I start just feeling like a wreck.
Yeah.
But if I go too soft, then I feel like I'm not really getting much of a workout, so there'll be days where maybe I want to bring it up to the spicy range, because I've been testing something and I'm feeling pretty confident with it. I need to go try it out. But then there will be other days where, maybe I'm feeling a little, under the weather, like, just like drained, whatever. Maybe I need to back it off. And so, that would be a good day to go to the catch up section.
Exactly.
And I actually have an experience with a partner that what you said reminded me of, like just talking about talking while rolling. I was a lifter before I came to jiu-jitsu, and we had a new student come in who also was a lifter, really big, strong guy. And so when he and I would roll, it would be very obvious to me when he was going to do something, because he would brace his body really hard like he was about to do a heavy squat. So he would just be like, So just as soon as I would hear that, I would just basically like brace for this big explosion, and then once that was over, I would be ready to go again. And so he was gassing out all the time and having a really hard time and being like, bro, my cardio is terrible. And I was like, bro, it's not your cardio, it's what you're doing. So we had a long conversation about it, and I thought about it over the weekend. I was like, how can I help this guy? And so he and I started, I had this idea where, what if we just have a conversation while we roll, so that you can't do that brace? It'll help you to modulate your breathing. And it totally changed our rolls from this kind of like really weird, stilted, like almost not an exchange of technique, to all of a sudden we were moving, like we were doing jiu-jitsu together. And so that was one time where I agree that talking can be a little bit annoying, but that was one time where it was necessary to get him to break that habit of that just hardcore brace that he had.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, when I teach the positions, I purposely, and I don't know if the students know this, or maybe they just think I'm talking too much, but I'm purposely talking the whole time, like from, while I'm actually doing it, because then that's forcing me to make sure that all of my mechanics are effortless, so that I'm able to demonstrate it correctly and effortlessly. Because, sometimes you're going to muscle something, or you're going to go too hard, and then the students are going to see you doing it incorrectly, right? So this was only a couple of years ago, but I noticed that I started to do it for that exact reason.
That's pretty darn cool. I'll take a $25 royalty from you. How about
Send me your PayPal. I got you.
Oh man, yeah. So what's cool about that idea is that you're basically, especially with the free drilling, I like that too, because you're also coaching it. You're not just saying like go drill whatever you want. You're walking around the mat and checking what people are doing to see, like, can I help this person advance the thing that they're working on, as opposed to just you're just doing what you're doing. It's still guided. It's just not guided by the curriculum. It's guided by the student.
Exactly.
I really like that, because talking to Lachlan Giles, he said that the majority of our training actually should be self-directed, but it should always be guided by someone with more experience than us. So what are we interested in? That's what we should be training a lot, but because that's going to keep us coming back to the mat. If take for instance, if I was in a class where they were just continuously teaching spider guard, eventually my fingers are just going to give out, and I'm going to have to take a break. But if I can keep working on what I'm working on with the coach's direction, I'm still going to learn spider guard, but it's just because of my fingertips, it's not going to be like a core of my game, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree completely.
So I would bet that there's from a business standpoint, I know that you had like the finance stuff. I bet there's a business case to be made for that open drilling that is also instructor directed, because I think that there's probably a student retention bonus that comes from that, because you're letting the students express themselves.
Yeah, but also like, beyond all of that, it's what I, a lot of students, they would come up to me and they're like, "Oh, I'm not happy with my jujitsu," and and I could see on their face, they're stressed and they're tense, and I tell them, I'm like, "Hey, man, like, like you're, you work in USPS, or you're a stockbroker, or you're a bike messenger. Like, you have a full-time job. Like, this it should be your stress reliever. You shouldn't, be, having additional stresses from jujitsu. Like, like, have some fun. Let's take a step back." And I think, open drilling and letting students kind of, be more free, that helps with that, because again, like sometimes like I would come to Shaolin's class and I was, terrible with the butterfly and I was terrible with the spider and De La Riva as well, as, same as you. And I'm like, and then I would see him teach it and I'm like bracing myself like, oh man, like I have to like drill this now. And, like, I would do it, but, and that's probably why I was also trying to do my own thing and trying to find my way out, right? So I think that's another aspect, and also like, I think so many people these days, they take, jujitsu is very serious. This is my life, but they take it too seriously. Like at the end of the day, we should do it for fun. We should, this is, I don't know. For me, it's one of the most fun things that you can do. I'm exercising like a madman right now, but nothing replaces that jujitsu, right? And it's that fun aspect, it's that challenging yourself aspect. So I think that's another, big, something big to think about too.
I totally am with you that I am exercising like a madman as well. I found myself, like within 2 weeks of us having to shut down, I was just getting really grumpy and pissy with my kids and not being the kind of dad that I want to be.
Yeah.
And so I just started working out like 4 times a day, just to burn the anxiety, right? Just melt it. And I like working out. I always have enjoyed working out and whatnot, but there's nothing that I've ever enjoyed uh, that is as physical as jujitsu that I enjoyed as much as jujitsu. So it's a great, just from like a fun workout. Like, take away the self defense, take away the competitive, take away the the expressiveness and the artistic nature of it. It's just freaking hard and fun. And how many things are hard and fun? It's a very rare combination.
Yeah, I agree completely. I can, and it's also there was a quote about jujitsu that somebody said a long time ago, and I think about it almost every single day, and it's actually one of my favorite quotes. And the quote is, "There are two types of people in this world: those that are humble and those that are about to be." You know, it really, really, really applies to jujitsu. And I think as humans, we should be humbled on a regular basis. And if we were all humbled on a regular basis, the world would be just maybe a little bit of a better place. And you can work out, you can do a kettlebell workout, you can do a weightlifting workout, you can run, you can swim, whatever. But that humbling of getting tapped out, I think this is this medicine that many people, especially me, really need.
And then on the converse to that, there's something so magical about when you find something that starts to work and you get take for instance, I spent a lot of time on my back in bottom side control, like you know 18 months of it, just eating shit, and I'm not even trying to pretend that I didn't. But now if somebody passes my guard and gets to side control, it's just like, okay, I know where we are, I've been here before, and I'm working my escape as the pass is happening. And so all that getting humbled also led to a certain level of self-assuredness where it's like, I've eaten this shit sandwich enough times to know that I can swallow it. So I'm going to be just fine. It's not going to be fun, but I'm going to be fine here.
Yep, I agree. And then in classical Chinese martial arts, there's an expression and it translates to enjoying bitterness, like eating that bitterness. I guess you can say vodka or alcohol is relevant in that respect, right? But I think for jiu-jitsu and for fighters, you need to learn how to enjoy, like you said, eating shit, so to speak. Enjoy the suffering, and because that's really what's going to help you grow, and that's really what's going to help you progress. And that's why a lot of people quit, because they can't enjoy that suffering. They only want to get the highs, and you can only get to the highs after experiencing a lot of the lows.
I definitely think that for me, I'm not very motivated if things are going well. In my life, when things are going well, I kind of go into like autopilot. I'm just kind of coasting. Like I'm happy with it. It's when things start to suck that Harrison gets moving. And like this COVID thing, it's changed my routine. I'm embarrassed to say this, but I'm healthier because of this pandemic. I'm working harder because I'm worried that on the backside of this, probably my job in travel is going to be very restricted and maybe go away.
Yeah.
And so rather than like right before this happened, I was just perfectly happy, just to kind of do what I did. But as this, I won't say adversity, but this really challenging circumstance started to set in, that was a trigger for me to get moving. And I really attribute a lot of that to jiu-jitsu. Like jiu-jitsu kind of taught me, it's like when things suck, that's when we got to get serious. It's like, it's okay. We'll be fine. We've been here before, but we got to get moving too.
For sure, 100%. Because hey, man, if you're going to be staying on that bottom cycle for too long, you're going to be tapping any second now, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
you need to. Jiu-jitsu teaches you how to stay calm, how to stay patient, but at the same time, plan your next move and wait for the opportunity, and also, keep moving.
Yep. That's such a cool concept of the particular hobby that we've chosen. It's exciting just to chit chat about it. Right now, if we can't do jiu-jitsu, the second best thing that we can do is just talk about it.
It's like you can't eat, so you might as well watch the Food Network, right?
Exactly. So we've covered a lot of the things that wanted to cover. One of the things that from your video, the instructional that you put on YouTube, is that you gave the G roll up for free, and what you wanted in return for that was people to experiment with it and put it to use, and then to allow the community to grow it almost like an open source software from like the software world. So what has the community response to that been? Have you seen things come back to you from sources like myself who've experimented with it that taught you things with the G roll?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to clarify just a little bit slightly, Harrison. So my academy that I run with Van in New York, we are a donation-based academy. So we don't have any contracts. We don't have any rules with money. We have some classes that have a minimum donation, some classes that have a suggested donation. More than half of our classes are on a suggested donation basis. So people can come in. Some people don't pay. Some people pay. Nobody sees anything. Some classes have like a very low minimum donation, and we have some membership options for those that are able to do it. And actually, the G-roll instructional, the first one that you're referring to, I kind of used that as an experiment. I just said, guys, if you want, like, you can send me a PayPal donation. So,
Mm-hmm.
the reason I'm saying that is because the response was tremendous. People send me $5, $10. Some people send me even more, and they really supported me. And this was at a time where I didn't really have anything, and it really meant a lot to me. And I thought that was super super cool. And also people from all over the world tag me, and they send me videos of themselves hitting it. And some people are making up their own modifications on it. And just to, I hope I don't go too much off topic, but it's gonna,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna connect in a second. I hope, I hope there's nothing, I didn't spike this tea that I'm drinking. There's no rum in there. What happened was I was kind of a one-trick pony for a very long time, where I would just do the G roll, I would do a Kimura, and pretty much that's it. And for the last 5 6 years, I've been really reinventing myself. And what I started to do is I started to I stopped doing the G roll altogether. I would just do it once in a blue moon, and I started to do passing the guard. I started to do all types of submissions. I started playing the butterfly guard. Actually, I love butterfly guard now. Playing all sorts of guards. And I also in the last few years I started to specialize in no-gi. And I also, in the last couple of years, started to really learn leg locks and learn leg entanglements, and adding that to my game, which actually fit perfectly with the G roll.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was I actually recently, about a year and a half ago, I shot G roll 2.0, and it's available on the Grappler's Guide. And it's almost the same as the first one, and the first one is going to be relevant, but there are some modifications where I added some of the new things that I started to to work on. And I think it was really, really important to kind of use that first experiment to kind of help me grow as a grappler. And it's what inspired me to grow as a grappler, because I said to myself, I can't just be a one-trick pony forever. And in tournaments also, people started to catch on. So I told myself, I gotta start adding new things to my game, and that's kind of what started happening, little by little over the years.
Well, you saying that actually reminded me. I was introduced to the G-Roll about 3 years ago, and I actually sent you $5 on PayPal.
Damn.
So
Thanks, man.
yeah, I forgot that I even did it because it was so long ago. But you talking about it jogged my memory because it was awesome. And just like you said, using it as an entry for leg locks, that's primarily what I do. If I'm in half guard, I'll use kind of like the Craig Jones method of getting to the far leg in half guard if I'm going to go under and get to the legs, or it'll be G-roll on the leg that's trapped. So it's one or the other.
Nice. So yeah, it was like an experiment in many, many different aspects, And what I didn't elaborate on is also because it was out and it blew up a little bit. I think it got like maybe 40,000 views on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I didn't even upload it on YouTube. I don't even know who uploaded it on YouTube. I uploaded it on Vimeo, and
Okay.
somebody took it and put it on YouTube. And then on YouTube, it became more popular. But then all my competitors, every time they would fight me, they would know I would be doing it. And like, I don't believe, like, even though I joked earlier with the secrets and all that stuff, at the same time, on both of the G-Roll instructions, every time I teach, every time I do a seminar, I try to give as much of myself out as possible, because the real secret, as you know, and everybody knows that's listening to this, is putting the hours in, putting the work in. That's the secret. And everything else, these are just like little tidbits here and there. So that's another reason why I had to expand my game, because also my opponents knew exactly what I was going to do.
It's so funny that you say that. When we interviewed Lachlan Giles, I had sent him an outline of some of the questions I wanted to ask him about ADCC and about his training leading up to it, because obviously he had an amazing breakout performance this year's or in 2019 ADCC. And I said, if any of this is like competitive advantage stuff, we don't have to go over it. I'm not trying to expose you or anything. And he's like, no, I can tell you everything that I do. It doesn't matter. It comes down to the work. Who's going to work on it, And so everyone goes into that competition, and if they do the work, they're going to be the one that wins.
100%.
Well, Alex, this has been just an amazing talk, and really appreciate your time and your insight. I'm very excited to put in place some of the things that you taught us with the free drilling, and then the different spices of the mat. I think that's a pretty darn cool way of putting it. If someone wants to reach out to you and get some training in or learn more about you, how would they go about that?
I'm very easy to find. So my Instagram is my name Alex, and then Masterskya. The word master, the word sky, the letter A, and my real last name is Ecklin, Ecklin. So you can just find me on Facebook. You can Instagram me, Facebook me, email me, send me a carrier pigeon. I don't know, so whichever way,
And $5 on PayPal doesn't hurt either, right?
You got $5, yeah, friends and family, because I don't want to pay any fees.
Very nice. Well, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything before we go that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, well, I mentioned it to you a little bit earlier. A close friend of mine, and one of my, first students, and then now, he's like almost like a colleague, is Tom Corey. And him and I and myself and Van, and I have so many friends that we talk about all these concepts, and everything that I talk about, it's not only from me. It's an accumulation of many people that are helping me behind the scenes. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to those two guys. There's probably going to be 10 guys that are going to message me later, say, hey, where's my shout out?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, but everyone's in my heart, and just wanted to say big thanks to both of those guys just for now.
Well, our ending segment for the show is we have a segment called 3 Up, 3 Down. It's kind of like Reddit, like you can upvote or downvote. So tell us three things looking back through your training. It could be your training, it could be your teaching, it could be strength and conditioning, it could be things that you've done in your academy. Three things that you've done that have really helped either yourself, your students, your community, and then three things that you look back on and it's like, if I would have not done that, I could have done a lot better.
Yeah, so let's start with the things that I did that I'm happy that I did. So the first thing that I did is I'm very happy that I was never like set in my ways, and I was always flexible. Listening to Van, listening to my other instructors that are under us and that teach for us, as well as listening to the students' feedback. So approaching the gym not as like I'm the professor, everyone's going to do what I say, blah, 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 my way or the highway. So kind of just being kind of, free and being open-ended. That'll be the first thing that I'm happy with. Another thing that I'm happy with is that I was and still am competing alongside my students, because it's a lot of times so easy to, be frustrated, be like, oh, why can't you do this, this, and this? It's easy to,
Mm-hmm.
sit back. And I'm going through the same struggles, that they're going through. The other thing is that I'm happy with all the risks that I've taken. As I mentioned to you before, the school is donation based, so the whole business is the whole thing is a risk. And I'm happy with it. I've taken so many unsuccessful tries at teaching different things. The things that I mentioned to you, this is all trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
But I've tried so many things, and a lot of them were risky. And some students come up to me and they're like, "Wait, let's not do that again." And then and we don't. So those are the three things that I'm happy about. The things that I wish I could have improved. The first is that I wish I wrestled. I never wrestled in high school. It's something that I lacked. The second thing is I wish I trained more no gi coming up. Just given the circumstances in Shaolin school, there was only a couple of no gi classes, and but I wish I found a way to train a little bit more no gi. The other thing is to treat my body more as a professional athlete, because I would treat jiu-jitsu as professional. Like I would, make sure I would never miss a training. I would always train hard. I would never give up. But I never had a clean diet, and I never had like a strength and conditioning routine until way later, And it's both of those areas are still huge works of improvement. It's something that I'm implementing now. So I would say that would be the things that I wish could have been better.
Those are fantastic, and what you just said honestly was fairly universal about the things that you wish you had done better. So don't feel like you're the only one that's ever done it. There's a lot of professional athletes that same as you, make their living off jiu-jitsu who,
Yeah.
looking back on it, wish they had been a little bit more professional in the stuff outside of jiu-jitsu.
Exactly.
Might have made it a little easier on them.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much. This was just a phenomenal experience. You've given us a lot of great insights and provided a lot of value to my old roller brothers and sisters with things that they can implement in their own training to be better for longer.
Thank you so much, Harrison. Thank you so much for having me. It's a huge pleasure, and hope to speak to you soon.
Absolutely.